circle up what shapes the future of belonging. What a big topic, right? And we discussed with our guests what the past can teach us about belonging, the role of local and global communities and our mental health, how belonging is changing, and of course, how it will look like in the future and how you are a part of shaping it. And here in the room, you are invited to connect with one another and create belonging among yourselves. In the second part of the hour, I encourage you to leave your camera on, share your presence the entire time. You might also use the Zoom menu. The Zoom menu gives you amazing tools. One of them are captions, so you can switch on automated captions. By now, there's even translated captions. They're still a bit slow, but AI is making it possible to read what is being said here in other languages. So make use of that. And before I welcome our guests, let's gather some knowledge together. You already shared where you're all from, which is a beautiful cloud that you're seeing here on the screen. And now I have a hard question for you. The first hard question of the hour to all of you. In one word, in just one word, what does belonging mean to you? In one word, what does belonging mean to you? That is our community question to kick off the hour today. And you can answer it, as I said, by pulling out your phone, scanning the QR code, or clicking on the link that is being shared in the Zoom chat right now to get to our tool, to Menti. And we're so excited to see already the knowledge coming together from all around the world. Acceptance, purpose, togetherness, comfort, connection, safety at the center. And thank you for giving us the answers. We will give you a few more moments to type, to learn about this new tool that we're using, DJ Hourglass. Please help us, make us think. Thank you all. A good time to welcome folks on stage right now who create belonging wherever they go. Please first up, welcome back to Horizons, the curator of Dubai Future Forum, joining us live from Dubai, where she stayed dry, fortunately, over the crazy rainfalls that happened there yesterday. Ayman Al-Qadi, welcome back to the show. Welcome to Horizons. Good to see you.
Hi, Felix. Hi, everyone. Buna, marhaba, bonjour, bonsoir. Lots of different languages that I speak. Buna, I see there was a few Romanians. I'm actually half Romanian, so Buna. And buonasera if you speak Italian as well. So all part of my definition of belonging is culture and language.
You're a multi-hyphenate, Aman. You are not only Romanian, what other cultures do you carry in you?
Oh dear, do we have an hour? Okay, so short version, half Romanian, half Egyptian, born in Morocco, raised for the most part here in the United Arab Emirates. So, you know, to the point of belonging, and I saw home as one of those words. I guess I belong here in the UAE. And then kind of traveled quite a bit, you know, Canada, the UK, lived in various parts of the world, and I've come back here now. So yeah.
Okay, I think I counted 4 continents. That's very impressive. But what does belonging mean to you personally? How do you sort of define it for yourself?
So my word was journey, right? And I think belonging, you know, it is a journey for me. It's a very personal thing, first of all. And then it really does change over time. It's not something that's, you know, you don't just, you know, you're not just born and you suddenly belong, right? It's a journey. It's how you feel in the moment, how you want other people to see you, and how you want other people to know that you belong where they are as well. It's certainly about that community as well. With the Dubai Future Forum last year, and I know you're going to mention this, but last year we had over 100 countries show up to the forum. And essentially it's about fostering that sense of belonging into the future space, and creating that community to allow people to have a voice and have a say in the way that the future that they will belong to is dictated.
And you make it happen, and you are part of the reason why people are here right now, like Sabrina from Calgary, who got up very early for us. Good morning. And from Bangkok all the way to Bangkok, staying awake to be here. Thank you. 100 countries. I have never seen such an event like the forum last year. It felt like the United Nations of Foresight, walking through the hallways, all these people from places I've never been to that I had the chance to meet. And registration for this year, I think, is about to begin. So
yeah,
how are you going
hours.
to 48 hours only.
Yes,
Oh,
in
wow.
48
Okay.
hours, we kick off registration April 19th, and you can find all that information on our website.
Perfect. How are you going to shape belonging this year for this event? What is it that you do with the foresight, with the futuring community that is in the room here right now?
So various things, I guess part of, the journey with the forum is ensuring that not only the right people are sort of in the room, but the right people that we speak to be able to curate an agenda where everybody feels that it relates to them, and it makes sense for them to come and join us, right? So they need to feel that sense of belonging throughout the 2 days. It's not just I've showed up. I can give you a very small example with a lot of our Indigenous Futures foresight practitioners. We tapped into that space last year by holding one of the very first sessions, if not the first session in the Middle East on Indigenous Futures thinking at the museum. It was so successful. We're now in touch with these Indigenous foresight practitioners to understand how it is that we can actually have these practitioners throughout the 2 days and not just kind of be seen as something where, they have their own space or their own agenda, but instead embed them throughout the 2 days. And we do this for various communities that we work with, based out of Africa, based out of Asia, to ensure that there's always that inclusivity, there's always that diversity in the room for all the various sessions that we touch on.
Wow, so excited. And 48 hours only. The link is in the chat. Watch it and register when you can. We have another curator in the room. You just mentioned Africa, Aman, whose event has also a belonging focus. It's called Between the Two of Us, and it's happening in Tangier in Morocco. I'm sure you know the place, Aman. In also just a few days in early May, it's already happening, presented by House of Beautiful Business, which is, I think, such a great name for the Berlin-based think tank. And the curator of the event, the co-curator, is here with us to join us live. Hannah Bezat. Hannah, so good to have you in the room with us. Hi out there. Where are you joining us from?
Thank you, Felix. Hi, everyone. I'm actually joining from Tangier itself. So only a couple of weeks ahead of Between the Two of Us starting.
Wow. What is your own belonging journey, Hannah? I mean, Aman just mentioned, I think, 4 continents when describing her journey. I think you're also Moroccan, is that right?
I'm Moroccan. France is home. Portugal is home. Rwanda is home. The US is home. Canada is home. Yeah, I kind of a bit like Iman. I find my home in my mobility very much.
I think you called yourself a notorious migrant.
Absolutely.
That is such a nice way to say it. And you have taken a very interesting work on your shoulders. You published a book about your experiences of othering called Being Other, The Beauty and Power of Being an Outsider. You published that last year, and you're now curating this event. It's happening in the early days of May, from May 2 to 5. Members of Dubai Future Forum will be in Tangier. You will be attending Dubai Future Forum this year. So this is already a beautiful collaboration. And your festival is called Between the Two of Us. You gather many future thinkers there. Among them, our guest speaker today, Kim Dabbs. So what do you, coming from Aman's way of shaping belonging, what do you hope to emerge from this gathering that you're creating when it comes to belonging?
Well, as a co-host and co-curator for the house, and seeing this, what we like to call the most beautiful business festival coming to this first edition in the African continent, which is very dear to my heart. My aspirations are quite simple, actually. I hope we get to the soft edges, and in the words of Bayo Komolafe, who's one of our co-chairs, very much talk about our cracks, embrace our cracks, and hug our monsters. And I hope that from this very tender place, we decide how we want to become a source of boundless inspiration for the advancement of the life-centered economy as a new paradigm. What I'm already seeing, we have a WhatsApp chat with attendees, and some speakers have joined already, and it's so alive and ready. So I'm really excited to see what will emerge from it, the cross-pollination of their work, the potential collectives that will be created in between continents for many collaborations on all dimensions that we're tackling at the festival. Yeah.
Thank you for being here with us, Hannah, and for inviting your community to this space. And Shall just ask in the chat, what is the festival name again? I can tell you, it's called Between the Two of Us, and we have even posted the links in the Zoom chat. And Hannah, it's important to understand the House of Beautiful Business is putting all this together, but the event is called Between the Two of Us, and I think it speaks to belonging, right? Between the continents and between us who have to recreate our relationships.
So for us, it's kind of like appreciating the relationality and what's, you know, what makes our intimacy at an individual level up to the collective. It's very much this point of juncture as well, and kind of appreciating the tensions, the frictions, the global north, the global south, the polycrisis, the polarities, degrowth, growth, what UI AI does to us in terms of human agency. And consciousness, and what's between the two of us kind of creates that space, that container for us to explore that very much.
Beautiful. And we just shared again the links in the chat. Dima is here, your colleague, who just invited everybody to join. And I will now ask our guest speakers to join us. First up is also joining us from the UAE, the Professor of Psychology and Executive Director of the International Association of Islamic Psychology, Dr. Abdallah Rothman. Abdallah, I'm so glad you're here. Good afternoon to you in Abu Dhabi, I think.
Yeah, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. It's good to be here with you all.
Thank you, Abdallah, for joining us. And next, our co-speaker today, a global leader in belonging and purpose, author of You Belong Here, and vice president at Steelcase. Good morning, good early morning to you in Houston, Texas, Kim Dabbs. Kim, hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Felix.
Since you joined, Kim, the sun came up in Houston. It's a bit brighter in your room now.
It is. The difference a few minutes makes, right?
Yes. And I think it is a good point to crash Zoom for a moment. I love that, doing that. And let's get all of you on stage. You heard that right. So we're going to switch the spotlights off and we're going to say hi to one another. So if it's comfortable for you to switch on your camera and your microphone right now, go off mute, do so now, and greet your guests and amazing Foresight community in a room in your favorite language. Welcome, everyone. Be loud. Don't be shy. Let's crash Zoom. Hello, Horizons. Hi, Olivia. How are you?
Guten Tag aus Frankfurt. Wunderschöne Woche.
When was the last time you felt like you belonged? I think that question, I'm still thinking about it. It's such a hard question, but it's the one I wanted to ask you guys first. Abdallah, when was the last time you felt like you belonged?
Good question. I think the last time over a period of time was in Sudan, amidst my married family. My wife is Sudanese, but also I would say my spiritual family there. And I think what made it so significant and stand out as an experience of belonging or true belonging is that I look so different than everyone else there. I didn't speak the language. I couldn't even communicate with words. I had totally different cultural norms and assumptions. So on the outside, it would seem like I didn't belong. And yet I was made to feel absolutely one of them. And so this experience, I think, made it clear of what makes us belong, or what is it that makes me belong. So it was about something deeper on I would say a soul level, not about this surface level identities and commonalities, but like a deeper reality of identity that is somewhere underneath all of that external stuff. And so beyond sort of the temporary manifestations of my identity. And so I think that really forced me to think about where is it? Like, what is it that I'm belonging? If I felt so much belonging there and yet externally I didn't fit in, it made me really key into who am I underneath there and what are they able to see? And it was really about the heart level connection. And so it really focused for me this question of who am I underneath the cultural, circumstantial, particularities of identity.
And it's magic that in a place where you are so different that you feel like you belong. Kim, you're far away from home right now. You usually live in Germany, but now in other side of the world in Houston. When was the last time you felt like you belonged, Kim?
That's a great question. And I think it's a constant, it's a constant journey. I think we heard that earlier today in the comments. Belonging is a journey. So when I think about the last time I belonged, I feel like I belong everywhere, everywhere I go, every city I arrive to, if I can show up authentically and really have that within me. At the same time, I feel like I belong nowhere. Right. So often I'll go in places and spaces that weren't curated to foster belonging. So you can have that individual knowledge and acceptance of who you are, really owning and understanding that. But at the same time, we also as leaders have a responsibility to create safe spaces in the meantime.
So I hear from you the journey. I hear safety, which is all things that came up in the initial word cloud that we built together. And I hear from you, Abdallah, the heart-to-heart connection. Three very different definitions of belonging. Abdallah, is there something like an objective general definition of what belonging actually is?
Well, I don't know objective, but I definitely think I resonate with this idea of safety. And, when I'm saying what allowed me to feel belonging is this heart connection, there's a certain sense of vulnerability that being open-hearted to be able to be seen and accepted requires this sense of acceptance. And so I guess my definition of belonging would be an allowance to be where I am, who I am, and knowing that that's constantly in fluctuation. So sort of whatever state that I'm in, knowing that the space can and will hold those fluctuations, allowing me to be my full self, inclusive of, I would say, multiple dimensions of who I am.
Multiple dimensions is a good cue for you, Kim, because you brought us visuals from yourself and your journey of belonging, and we're going to share them on the screen right now. And we will also show what kind of framework you have worked on with your book that just came out. But first of all, who do we look at here?
We see this professional identity that we have, or like this identity that doesn't really speak to all of our experiences that we accumulate all over our lifetime. So I'm a Korean-born American adoptee that currently lives in Munich, Germany. And when you think about all of those layers and complexity of identity, the one thing that I feel like throughout my life is I've had to be a cultural chameleon just to try to fit in. And so often those cultural policies, the communities that we live in every single day, tell us to hide parts of our identity, to tell us not to live fully and authentically. And we start to shift and change and shape those narratives throughout our life. And when that happens, we don't find belonging within ourselves because we start to shift and change so much of who we are and those beautiful parts of our past. And those beautiful experiences within our own journeys. So throughout
the top left picture is that that's you when you were an adoptee?
Yeah, so this is the only baby picture I have of myself before I arrived in the US. So one of the ways that I look at that photo too, when we think about identity and belonging, these social cues that we have, these cultural cues that we have, if you look at that photo, and especially that last one with the numbers on the chest, as a young baby, the first artifact of identity that I had, it's almost like a mugshot, like my identity was being criminalized before I was even able to fully understand, have words, have cognizance, all of these things. And then as you start to go into those other experiences and the other photos, you know, being the only an Asian child within a very Midwestern white family, even within that family unit, there's so much complexity with identity. And now living within Munich, Germany, and all of these places and spaces I go, when I go back to Korea, Koreans say, well, you're not Korean. And when I grew up in America, they're like, well, you're not American. And now in Germany, they're like, no, you're not German. And we have these ideas around global citizenship. But at the end of the day, if you deconstruct the word belonging in and of itself, it's be, to exist, long, that desire, ing is that constant action. Like we all are actively longing to exist. And when we start to find belonging within ourselves, that's the moment. That's the moment where authenticity can start to thrive.
And Kim, you went on this journey by writing this book, You Belong Here, to help others and create a framework for the belonging journey. And as we have so many practitioners, futures, researchers in the room, what can they learn from what you have put together here? What are we looking at? How can everybody apply this in their work, in their life?
Yeah, so I'm going to give like the short answer to this, and it's a very complex answer. But for me, like the journey to belonging was part of it is really understanding your identity and seeing it fully. So I talk about this belonging journey as seeing, claiming, editing, and owning parts of your identity. But I also talk about different aspects of identity. So your lived identity, when we can see our lived identity, those things that we inherit by birth. There are aspects of our identity that absolutely are fixed. I can't change the fact that I was born in Korea. I can't change the fact that I was an adoptee or born into poverty or all of these different circumstances. Now that claiming your lived identity, these are the choices that we make in life. And then when we start to deconstruct that, when we do some of that inner work, we realize a lot of the choices that we think we have are choices are actually not choices, or they're not equitable choices. So how can we start to dig into those policies in the environment that we live in, and then really use that as a tool for equitable access? On the edit side is really what I consider that lingering identity. So that's our default position when our values are pressure tested, when things happen in the world, when we go into environments that don't feel safe, that don't feel psychologically safe. When we get into that mode, you can almost feel it before you have the words for it. That's the piece that if we can edit and understand our response to that, what are the mechanisms that we have? What are the questions we can ask ourselves to bring us from that kind of fight or flight or fawn response back into ourselves? And then I talk about our lived identity. You know, over time, we look at these things as almost like diversity, equity, and inclusion, seeing, claiming, editing, but owning is that loved identity. It's when you can show up with authenticity, when you've created spaces that other people can show up as their authentic selves. And I love, Abdallah, like the example you gave around belonging, because belonging is when we realize we're all outsiders. All of us come with different experiences and different life experiences from different cultures and different languages, different choices in life. And our role when we think about a loved identity is not only to find that for ourselves, but to design and create those futures where other people are able to do that as well. So if you're in a position to be designing futures, and this group is designing futures for our world, with that power comes responsibility, and the only use of that power is to share it with others. So how are we democratizing these environments? How are we actually building belonging within all of the experiences that we design?
Wow. As someone who grew up in a very homogenous society in Germany, when you say belonging is not sameness, that is a very, very important and I think strong thing for me to take from the session already. Abdallah, hard question again for you. Karim also just talked in the chat about, you know, why has it become so hard to belong? Why has belonging become such a hard thing? You as an Islamic researcher, with now being a practitioner and in our postmodern times and a healer, you look at the whole arc of belonging from ancient communities to the communities of today. How has it changed? How has belonging changed? And why has it become so hard for us?
Yeah, it is a hard question because it's multi-layered and multifaceted. And I think why it's become so difficult is that we seem to have adopted this way of understanding ourselves and the world that sees things in isolation. And so we're trying to make sense of things from one dimension of this world, this time, our identity, and we sort of disconnect and dislodge our sense of who we are in the world and what's happening in the world and sort of natural cycles from a continuum and a sort of trajectory of humanity, both universally and our own experience. So I think this notion of how past defines, where we see ourselves in the future, it's that we I think get this, when we get dislodged from this notion of continuity or of our identity as the human condition, we start to think of ourselves just on our own past, but whether that's individually or collectively, but it's most definitely shaping and defining where we belong, because it's all wrapped up, like Kim was saying, in systems of classification, differing ideologies, histories of traumatic experience, and most definitely power and privilege. This is what defines if and where you have a seat at the table. And so our relationship to this psychological process or processes that result from our life experiences, it really shapes our notion of who we are based on the experiences we've had. And that's, both individual and group, and those privileges that we've been afforded or barred from defining that. But I would say that these are all to do with our particular life trajectory. That is a way for us to be set up in this life to grow and evolve as human beings, both, again, individually and collectively, and that everyone has a vastly different set of circumstances that bring about these trials, tests, and hardships that have the potential to bring about change and sort of a realization or revelation for them. But I think where we become lost and why it's become so difficult is that the part of ourselves that can potentially be revealed through these particularities of circumstance and experience is the part of ourselves that is much more connected to, I would say, a universal reality of the human condition. And so underneath all of the diversity, which we fundamentally have to honor and be with and see as a vehicle, we have this human experience, and underneath that, those differences in circumstance, there is a common humanity. And that oftentimes people say, oh, well, we're not going to look at the differences because we're going to focus on the commonalities. And that's the wrong pathway. But it's also not throwing out the commonality, the common human condition, right? And so what that does is it disconnects us from this idea of human nature. And then we get scared with that because it has to do with different beliefs and ideologies. And so we sort of stay subjective. But what we miss out is on this, human identity that I would say transcends the particularities of experience that an individual or groups has in this life. And so it's an identity that's rooted in the notion that we are, to quote a philosopher, Pierre Desjardins, spiritual beings having a human experience. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings at the core having this human experience. And oftentimes we get stuck on the human experience, the particularities, and we disconnect from, well, who are we underneath those things? And so I think there's a reality to the human being as a soul who is only sort of partly part of this physical world, but also simultaneously existing in the spiritual dimension at the same time. And so it's interesting to think about belonging. Like Kim was saying, we don't really belong anywhere. And that's maybe there's a wisdom in that. Like we're actually the physical external identity of our persona isn't the end all be all of who we are. And so the key is that we're in the world, but not necessarily of it. And there's some sort of secret to winning at life that necessarily involves transcending the seemingly constricted and limited, pain and suffering and lack of belonging. And so this is the irony, is that how can we look at this embracing not belonging and underneath that finding how we really belong. This, like I was saying in my example, it was in this instance where I most didn't belong by my external persona that I was able to reveal how I really belong of what's underneath. And we tend to stay at this surface level of communication, even when we ask to get to know each other. It's, what do you do? Where are you from? What do you, it's all these, rather than like, who are you? What drives you? What is on a soul level, right? And so I think this idea of belonging in terms of understanding ourselves as souls is very much present in all ancient wisdom traditions. And so to sort of wrap up my answer in these multiple angles of it, bringing it back to this question of past defining where we belong in the future, I think tradition is something that is fundamental and important to successful future, because tradition is how we pass on universal and timeless wisdom. And so real tradition is not a static thing that stays in the past. It's really about living tradition. And it's not about doing things exactly as they have been done in different times. It's this living tradition that revives and updates to the new times, but that centers itself on core principles of humanity that guide how we're able to navigate in all of these changing times. And so it's about breathing new life into this and being adaptive and understanding, change is constant, but the wisdom remains the same. The human condition at its core, the concept of our humans as spiritual beings, not necessarily defined by religion, but just when we use the word human being, the notion of our being is fundamental reality of nature. And so, how do we understand belonging in terms of our souls and our hearts and consciousness, which arguably hasn't changed over time, and understanding what has changed is our relationship to ourselves, our perspective, our understanding, our awareness of things, our abilities. And so we have to understand our condition, but in this new perspective, and then sort of adapt to the present and this ever impending future, which is also constantly changing. But, doing it from this place of understanding who we are at the core. And this is very much about the heart. I always point here. And hopefully, if people stay, we'll do some practice of connecting to that part of ourselves, the heart. But I think it's really fundamental.
I feel like you just put decades of research and practice into 5 minutes. So thank you for that. That was not an easy feat. And we want to give people room here to connect. So I'm going to close with just a question to both of you. We have many community members who put in questions before the hour, signing up for today, and we really thank you for being so active in shaping the session. And many of you are now also reacting in the chat to what Abdallah said about embracing differences instead of sameness, and thinking about our connections much deeper, on a much deeper level. One of our community members, when they signed up, they asked, what is missing from how children are being raised that is driving polarization? Annalie, thank you so much for submitting that question. And I want to expand this question to close our conversation today and ask you both, what is the one thing that the futurists in this room need to teach their children, but also maybe their younger colleagues or their friends, so that, and we have that in the chat as well, this question, so that belonging actually increases and that this group can improve belonging? Is there one thing, one advice? I know, typical journalistic question, give me one thing, but I'm trying. Kim, what would you say? Is there one thing that you could give us as an advice that we should teach to our younger co-humans?
Oh my goodness, that's a tough one. Just one. I think just building on what Abdallah was talking about, the one thing, both as we go into the world, into learning environments, into culture, and all of these other places and spaces like workplaces, that I truly believe to get belonging to thrive, that's the inner work. You need to understand who you are. You need to understand your identities. You need to understand those experiences, because you can really, really then not allow the external world to continuously reinforce these narratives around your identity. And to do that, especially as change agents, I believe strongly inner work is systems work. And if we invest in inner work like we do so many other parts of systems and educational systems and work systems and work environments, carving out time as that as professional development, carving out time as that as individual development for educational systems. When we talk to young people, it's like prioritize that inner work, because it's so much of a fundamental part of belonging, of community. It goes back to that Ubuntu, I am because you are. And in order to be in relationship with others, in order to be in relationship with community, we have a responsibility to do that inner work.
Thank you. Abdallah, the last word for our conversation today, which I feel like we should have timed it to 3 hours at least, is on you. What do you think we should teach so that the younger ones that we share this space with, that they can shape the future of belonging? What would you recommend?
I think just building off what Kim said is that it is about the inner work, and that inner work is systems work in the sense that we have to do it in community. We can't be in isolation, because we all are impacted and affected by each other. But what I think, I would say maybe two things, if I could pin it down, of what I think is really important for teaching young people. And in fact, hopefully the young people then teach us, because we're also in need of it, is that learning to be vulnerable, like creating spaces where we're not just connecting through communication of information, but that heart level connection is about vulnerability. And in order to be vulnerable, you have to build community and intimacy and safety. And that means being in proximity with one another. It means being in intentional communities. And so I think the best thing that we can do is teach the children who are so connected, right? Meaning they have all these internet, social media, all these ways of being in touch with people. But the way that they're connected is oftentimes really up here, thoughts and words. And so if we can help people be vulnerable in their hearts and reintroduce being in proximity and companionship, and being willing to be exposing oneself, which requires building places of safety. So I think if we're going to be doing more remote connecting, like this Zoom podcast, where I love that, like we're about to, I think, if we have time, go into breakout rooms. You know, this is so important for people to connect on a personal level and not just be heads in boxes talking about ideas. And then I think the second thing I would say is connection with nature. That means, yes, going out and being in nature, but also recognizing that the cycles of nature, the seasons, the planets, the being connected to food source, and how this impacts local economies versus global economies. Like that's fundamental. Like when everything's globalized and we get our food, everything's outsourced and everything's global, we miss out on this really traditional wisdom of local economies and local communities where everybody has a place. You know, you had the butcher, you had the blacksmith, you had the farmer, and people had their place. Yes, part of that was just physical needs, but it was people had a purpose, they had a place. This is really what cultivates real belonging in community, but also connects people with natural cycles of how we stay aligned with our nature. I always say we find our nature in nature. And so we have to be attuned to nature in order to be attuned to ourselves and to healthy systems.
And I'm going to close with what Sabrina just put in the chat. I don't think we need to teach our young. We should learn from them. They're born with a sense of belonging, and the systems they encounter are where they get messages that they don't belong. I think that wraps up our conversation in a very interesting way. Thank you, Sabrina, and thank you both. This was tough. We got to so many talking points in just 20 minutes, and I really appreciate that you both showed up being vulnerable and personal, and I feel connected to your souls right now, and I hope you can feel it as well. We invite you to the next Dubai Future Horizons on May 9th. The link is going to come up in the chat for you right now. We hope to see you there, and you're in for a very special treat right now, because after Kim and Abdallah will say their final words, Abdallah will guide you on 15 minutes of mindfulness, of meditation centered around belonging. And before we do so, Kim and Abdallah, I would just ask to join me on the virtual stage one last time. How are you feeling, Abdallah? What would you like to leave us with today before taking over the room and taking us on your journey? What would you like to share with us as the final words to this community as part of the main session?
We share space with all of you, and I hope that the future brings a lot more of using these digital technologies, whether it's Zoom or whatever we have at our fingertips, to connect more personally and more vulnerably and on a heart level. So hopefully be in this space more with you all.
Thank you, Abdallah. And our next session in May is centered around the topic of, can AI solve loneliness? So we will go even deeper into what you just said and discuss. Kim, such an honor to spend this time with you together in your journey today. Thank you, Kim. What would you like to share with us before we part ways today into the meditation?
I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to be here with futurists, with thinkers, with foresight practitioners that care about belonging. And, I just encourage everyone to carve out time for that inner work, carve out time to really spend time in reflection and in community, and think of new and different ways that we can embed that not only in our own practices and rituals throughout our days, but also into the design process itself. Thank you.
Marisa just thanked you in the chat and called you Kiss. Thank you, Kiss and Felix. I think that's such a beautiful new nickname for you, Kim. I will say, Kim, that what you made very clear to me is that it's hard work. Belonging is very hard work. And to embrace the differences and to look back in time, Abdallah, you gave such a strong point to that. And I can't wait to now share the next 15 minutes together and think about what you both taught and shared with us today. You were so open, so vulnerable, so personal. Thank you for that. And Abdallah, while the music is fading, what can we expect in the next 15 minutes, Abdallah? What are you taking us on? What is going to happen?
I think really like a continuation of what we got a little taste of 2 minutes, and I think is so beautiful. And I think, just even taking that 2 minutes to shift way of being. And so what I want to do is go a little bit deeper into that and really try to, oftentimes when we think of mindfulness, it tends to be centered in the mind, and we're clearing thoughts. And so what I want to do is try to guide that process a little bit more into the body, like including our whole beings, with the center being in the chest, actually, where the heart physically exists, not just in abstraction.
Wow. Thank you, Abdallah, for taking the time for us. And we give you a few seconds to collect yourself, Abdallah, to get ready to guide us with some music from our amazing DJ, Hourglass. And we are so honored to hold the space for you here. Over to you, Jalisa, and then over to you, Abdallah.
So for those of you who are still with us, welcome. And, in this past hour, we've been doing a lot of talking, thinking, engaging with ideas. And so I just want to invite us to shift our way of being, to just be conscious and aware of the rest of our being. So I want to invite you to close your eyes if it's comfortable, or maybe lower your gaze. If you want, you can turn your camera off if it's on, whatever is going to make you comfortable, and be able to do some internal reflection. And just start to be aware of a shifting your way of being. And so as you process all of the thoughts and the ideas and the things that have been said about belonging and community and futuring, really bring yourself into this present moment. And start to, even on an idea level, you can start to think about moving from thinking about the future to really being in the present. Recognizing that this moment right now is really all that we have, because as soon as the future arrives, it will be the present. So just allow yourself a few moments to arrive in this current moment. And I want to invite you to shift from thoughts and really connect with a sense of perception in your body. So that what may help is if you just bow your head to your heart. And in doing so, recognizing that your head, which we often lead with, is sort of humbling itself and also pointing in the direction of what's beneath it. So giving acknowledgement to your body and just including your whole body in your sense of yourself. So maybe extending your awareness of presence to your feet. If you're sitting in a chair, feeling your feet planted firmly on the ground, maybe even to initiate that, wiggling your toes a bit. And feeling the weight of your body in your seat. Just feel gravity holding you on this earth, but also in this particular moment. Feeling this anchoring of your physical body, anchoring your sense of yourself, your being, in this place, right here, right now. And to sort of bring your ability to locate yourself here, just take a slow, extended breath, whatever that feels like to you, but just slow, conscious breath. And on the exhale, just letting go some of the tension that you may be carrying in your body. Drop your shoulders a little bit. And as you relax your body and sort of drop your shoulders, just be aware of making your spine somewhat erect so that you're uptight, so that you're upright, but not uptight. So as you extend, you may even push your shoulders back a little bit to extend your chest. Expand this area of the front of your being. And you may notice yourself thinking, assessing how you're doing or what's going on, or thoughts starting to come in. Just try to bring your focus to your body and move from the interaction with your thinking mind to see if you can connect with a sense of perception in your body. Imagine if you're awakening the pores on your skin and connecting to the perception that they have, the faculty of perception that exists in your body. Whether that's even just feeling a slight breeze on your skin, sensing the feeling of being in the room that you're in. And as you awaken this sense of your whole being containing this faculty of perception, as you take an inhale breath, slowly, just notice and bring awareness to the place where your chest expands as you inhale. Notice how when you inhale, your chest expands. And in this place where your air, the breath is coming in your chest, it's the same place where you might feel anxiety, where you might feel a sense of constriction, whether it's present with you now or in the past. That same place in your chest where we carry maybe even a sense of loneliness or reaction to not belonging. Just connect with how that constriction or that contraction can feel, maybe even how it can impede your breath. It's also the same place where you breathe and you can shift the sense of presence in that place in the center of your being, in your chest. So just noticing what may be present on your chest, take a breath in and invite some clarity that you are breathing in from the space around you. Imagine that you're breathing in this fresh perspective or a fresh purity of air into the center of your chest, in the center of your being. And see what shifts in that place. So as you bring this conscious breath into the center of your heart center, start to perceive, not necessarily think, but perceive with your heart what might be underneath this surface level of weight or constriction that you sometimes feel. Underneath the memories and the experiences, what else is there in the core of your being? And as you just sort of create space for being with that deeper part of yourself, again on the inhale, imagine that your chest is being filled with light. And you're somehow connecting with the spiritual aspect of your being. Notice how when you breathe in, you're taking the air that is around you and bringing it within you. As if you are enacting this exchange between your inner self and your external reality. So you're starting to allow yourself to expand your sense of the center of yourself, staying present with your heart, but at the same time connected to the outer reality around you. Just allowing the breath to regulate your sense of being present here and now in this moment. You might even allow your sense of yourself to expand to this sense of your extended self. Maybe even imagining connecting with the natural world. Imagining feeling the wind blowing through the trees, the waves of the ocean, like the breath coming in and out. Start to connect with this sense of nature being at peace and you being a part of that landscape. And staying with your body, staying with the presence in your chest, but also expanding your awareness to yourself as being a part of the ecology of this environment, of the world around you. And as you bring your focused awareness in this place in your heart, just allowing yourself to be here now. This is where you are. This is what is unfolding for you, with you, within you. And see if you can just give over any resistance or any need to control. Just allow yourself to surrender to this moment, to fully let yourself be and belong right where you are right now. Maybe even using this time to let go of whatever you may be carrying, burdens that we think we have to carry on our own. Just feeling that you're a part of something bigger and that it's not only your burden to carry. On the exhale, just letting yourself relax, letting your body sit more fully in your chair, and allowing your being to be held in this moment by something bigger than just yourself. Allowing yourself to be a part of something bigger, a bigger whole. And giving yourself the allowance to belong here. Right here, right now. Just take a few more moments to let that settle and to observe what is available for you and to you in this space. And with another inhale, really soaking this moment in and allowing yourself to be fully present in it. And as you start to come back into your regular way of interacting and Eventually, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes, but before you come out of this internal space, see if you can bring with you a sense of presence internally and a sense of this inner presence while being awake to the external world around you. So you're occupying multiple dimensions. And another slow, conscious breath. Be aware of your body, really grounding yourself in your whole being, feeling your feet on the ground, feeling the weight of your body in the chair. But also, as you connect with your body and being aware of your being from head to toe, really keeping this sense of the center of yourself being located in your chest, the place where we feel everything that we feel, where we can actually even change our state in the heart. And if it's comfortable for you, you can maybe turn on your camera and try what it feels like to maintain a sense of being in the heart, which is a vulnerable place and an internal experience, but at the same time being open to connecting with other people, so that we're holding this sense of vulnerability and internal experience while connecting with others. It's a difficult balance to maintain, but it's something that is really at the heart, pun intended, of belonging.
I just reading from the chat here, very enriching moment, beautiful wholeness, calmness, breath. This is what you created, Abdallah. Thank you so very much. And on behalf of the Remote Daily team, Karis, who did the mindfulness today, Liz, who was producing, pulling the strings in the background, and of course, Jaleesa, our DJ Hourglass. I have the honor to invite you now to say goodbye to each other. So if you would like to go off mute one last time and thank Abdallah and thank Kim and Eman, Inas, Hessa, Abdullah, and the team from the Dubai Future Foundation, and of course our friends from House of Beautiful Business. This was Dubai Future Horizons. So I would love to hear your voices when we all say goodbye to each other in whatever language you prefer. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Shukran.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great day,
So very
everybody.
much. This was so beautiful.
Good job.
Take good
Thank
care.
you.
Bye bye.